So I think for me, one thing I want to say about not having linear careers is just being open-minded to the different skills you will get along the way. Because now, or what I found in the roles that I've taken in the past 3-4 roles, are the teaching experience helped me facilitate workshops, training sessions. It helps me, I'm able to mediate between people. It's supported in my coaching style. Project management allows me to manage multiple projects and ensure that a function is fully running, which I'm doing now. And it's just the skills that you gain along the way can really set you up and craft you into the professional that you want to be. But I think you need to be open-minded to that, and open-minded to that it's not always a linear journey, and being okay with that.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against Our Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your regular host, and in our studio today we have my friend Mabinty Esho. Did I get a pronunciation of that right?
Well, yeah. Some Nigerians will say it's Esho, but yeah. It's...
Right. You're not Nigerian.
I'm not, but the name is, yeah. Right. Don't want my Yoruba family coming after me. But yeah.
Anyway, Mabinty is the head of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at Comic Relief, and originally from Sierra Leone. She came to this country as an immigrant with her parents, and today she's going to be sharing her story with us, on her journey from immigrant to the UK to head of DEI at Comic Relief.
Yeah.
Mabinty, welcome to Against Our Odds.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
I know.
But
after a few
stumbles
along the way, but that happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mabinty, can you just kick us off by introducing yourself, just to our guests? Before this episode starts, I'd like to ask a big favor. Your subscription means a lot to us, because the bigger this platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So do me a favor, please click on the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Now let's get back to this episode.
Well, hello everyone. As Daniel has said, my name is Mabinty Esho, and I'm the head of diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging at Comic Relief, a role I've been in for 2 years now, and prior to that I've done previous DEIB roles in the NHS and higher education, so a seasoned DEIB practitioner, I would say.
Thanks to Mabinty. So you came to this country, as I said earlier, from Sierra Leone, and I'm not sure if you had any recollections of your early years, as an immigrant in this country, and all that comes with that reality, not having the right paperwork and all that. How did you process that transition, into the UK society?
I guess it's challenging because I came here when I was 5. So it was myself, my 3-year-old sister at the time, and an aunt who had brought us over. So my parents had come before us. So my mum had come about 9-10 months before us, or maybe a year before us, and my dad a year before her, and they sent for us when the war had just kicked off in Sierra Leone. So I can't really pinpoint exact memories in Sierra Leone. So I remember my grandfather who cared for us. I remember my aunt and uncle who were also our primary caregivers at the time. Not going to school really. I don't really remember going to school in Sierra Leone. And coming to think of it now, that might have been a product of the war. But at 5 or 4, I have no recollection of school there. So that was sort of my time in Sierra Leone. I think my earliest memory what I have is the picture of my sister and I at Heathrow Airport the day we arrived here in the UK. And I think for me, that's where my life started. So my life kind of started here in the UK at the age of 5, knowing that I've left behind my granddad, who I loved so much, who I love so much, family that I knew, the sort of freedom that I had as a child in Sierra Leone. And I guess that's relative, right? Depending on whether what I had was freedom or was it freedom in the time in which it was, if that makes sense. So I guess that's my recollection. And in terms of how I navigate being an immigrant here in the UK, it's not something really as a child you think about or you talk about. But one thing I do know, there were certain things we couldn't do. So, for example, where friends were talking about going on holiday, we couldn't go on holiday because in hindsight, our papers weren't right or correct. So that's why we couldn't go on holiday. Thinking about taking long journeys. We lived in Islington at the time. So long journeys to Croydon, to the Home Office, and spending hours there and not really knowing why, and being rather bored, hungry, and just everything, and not really getting a clear explanation. That's also a clear memory. And I guess my most prominent memory was when I was in year 9. So I was in year 9, I studied Spanish, and the school had offered for us to go on a school trip to Spain, to Santander, my first holiday, and we'd just got our indefinite leave to remain. And the Home Office had provided my parents or my mum a slip that went into my passport, my Sierra Leonean passport, to say that we could travel. And I remember me in school, teenager, arriving at the Santander airport, and the Spanish officials, so it was Barcelona actually, arriving at the Barcelona airport, and the Spanish officials saying no, like were going back and forth with my teacher. And obviously I couldn't understand because they were speaking Spanish, but it was myself and another black student who were being interrogated. And at that moment, just realizing that something wasn't quite right, that obviously there was an issue with my passport and an issue with me travelling. Although I had indefinite leave to remain, I didn't have the red passport, which then caused additional issues. I think for me, that's when it really did kick in that I was an immigrant. I was, and I later found out we were asylum seekers. We were running away from war. We were running away to keep safe. And yeah, and I think it's sort of a process of grief, really, I want to say, especially as you get older. It's a process of grief, of grieving potentially what you had, if that makes sense. Grieving what could have been. Like I often think, what would my life be if I was born in this country? And just myself and my younger siblings who were born here, just the difference in mentality, the difference in confidence is you could just sense it. And it's just grieving and coming to a place of acceptance that this is my story, and not hiding around behind it or still perceiving it as a taboo or as a stigma, but actually owning it and using it to empower others to say, actually, yes, you were probably born in a war-torn country. You probably didn't have much education. I couldn't speak English when I came here. Couldn't speak English. Could barely write and read. I remember my parents' mum teaching me my alphabet in the summer in which we arrived. So, and I was 5 at the time. So couldn't read, write properly, but yet look at you now, sort of thing. You can still achieve. So I really want to own my story and empower others to say you can do it. Right.
So your journey to the head of DEI at Comic Relief has been anything but linear, because you've kind of done so many different things, and that's kind of what this podcast is about, to inspire people, that they can succeed against all odds, and they don't necessarily have to have sort of a stepped trajectory, from where they are now to where they want to get to. So do you just mind sharing with our guests, the various things of your path, crisscrossing?
I've done a lot of crisscrossing. And I used to be really embarrassed about it, because most people who get to like a senior leadership position have had linear careers and can show a clear trajectory of their career path. However, I can't. I've been, quite squiggly in my career journey. So I think the first thing to start off with is I studied sociology. So I went to Kingston University, studied sociology, came out with a degree, had so many hopes and dreams, as many 21-year-olds leaving university do. But guess what? It's the credit crunch. It's a recession. No jobs. And at the time, I worked in a residential care home for elderly people in Surrey, with the hopes of going on to become a social worker for elderly people. So it came out, there were no jobs. And then I thought, should I go on and do social work? And then the whole baby P incident occurred. And I just thought, I don't know if I have the emotional maturity at the time to really take on this job. So I carried on working in the residential home for about a year or so. And then I went on to get a project management accreditation, so got a Prince 2. And then I did a bit of freelancing, so supporting small independent organisations with websites, their more digital presence at the time, so looking at their website, their social media channels, etc. So did that for a couple of years, and at the time my husband and I, we weren't married at the time, but we were thinking about getting married. And as I was freelancing, he's an architect, so he was also doing his part 2 in architecture. We sort of had the conversation, if we're going to get married, have children, need a bit of stability. So I went on to get a postgraduate diploma in education. So got a postgraduate diploma in education, did my teacher training in a special educational needs school, and thought, yes, this is my dream. This is what I want to do. And then I went on and taught in a secondary school. And I realised it wasn't for me. So it was one of those things, right? You think this is something you want to do. And by the way, my grandfather was a teacher, a big teacher in the town in which we're from, and went on, when he stopped teaching, to work for the government and support local schools in the area. So I come from a family of teachers. So then going into the teaching profession and then being like, this is not really what you thought it was going to be. Not that I didn't enjoy it, I enjoyed it. And maybe in hindsight, it wasn't the profession, it was the school. But at the time, I just thought, I can't do this every day. So stopped teaching, still stayed in education, and worked for a charity that essentially supported head teachers to get their national professional qualification of headship, head teachers in the UK. So did that. Whilst I was working there and at the school, I essentially put together a mentoring program for young boys. I worked in a boys' school who are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, but what I saw, they were also from the global majority background, so either Black, Asian, or minority ethnic groups. So really enjoyed doing that. Thought, this is good. Worked in the charity, and we started up our staff network group called the BAME Network Group. Did that, and I thought, ooh, this is good. I wonder if I could do this full time. And then a job came up at a university doing just that full time. Okay. So I took it up. So it was actually a step down from what I would usually take, but I was happy to do that to get my foot through the door. So I worked as an EDI project coordinator at the time, and then a job came up to be the manager. I took it. I was appointed manager 3 months after starting in the project coordinator role, and I've been doing this ever since. So I think for me, one thing I want to say about not having linear careers is just being open-minded to the different skills you will get along the way. Because now, or what I found in the roles that I've taken in the past 3-4 roles, are the teaching experience helped me facilitate workshops, training sessions. It helps me, I'm able to mediate between people. It's supported in my coaching style. Project management allows me to manage multiple projects and ensure that a function is fully running, which I'm doing now. And it's just the skills that you gain along the way can really set you up and craft you into the professional that you want to be. But I think you need to be open-minded to that, and open-minded to that it's not always a linear journey, and being okay with that, because that can sometimes feel challenging when you have all these hopes and dreams, especially as a young person. You have all these hopes and dreams, you think you're going to be A or B, and then you realize that A or B might not be right in sight at the moment. But just being open-minded that you can take different routes to get to B or A, and that's okay, so long as you still have your sight on A or B, and you know what your purpose is. So I think purpose is really important too.
Right. You talk about purpose. You know, how can somebody basically crystallize their purpose in terms of, like, you know, really make sure, you know, that they're aligned with their purpose? You know, because you did mention that obviously you went into teaching, you know, and you kind of discovered that maybe this is not quite the right thing for me. But as you persisted, you know, the purpose became clearer. You know, so I guess my question is, for somebody who's watching this who hasn't yet discovered their purpose, you know, how best do you think they could go about probably exploring what, I mean, maybe there's something to do with their strengths, their interests. You know, could you just tell us a little bit about that?
I think for me, it's purpose. For me, is that niggling feeling you have that you cannot shake, that you want to change or you want to do, right? So for me, that niggling feeling has always been helping others. So that has always been that niggling feeling for me. It's that I've always told myself I want to be a vessel of support for others, whatever that way might be, in any, you know, in any dimension that might look like. It may look like, but that's my niggling feeling. So whether I was working in the elderly people's home, residential home, that niggling feeling was supporting elderly people have a good life before they leave this earth. And that was my purpose at the time. But that was still my purpose when I was supporting organizations with their digital presence, is thinking, how can I support you to reach out to lots of different people? So still helping, still being that vessel of support. And I think that has been the golden thread throughout my whole career, is I've been a vessel of support. So so I think that's been my purpose. So I guess purpose for everyone looks different, but I always say it's that niggling feeling you can't shake. And if you not quite sure what that niggling feeling is, then think about the things that bring you joy, but also the things you want to change, right? Because it's what do you want to change in society, in yourself, that you want to do, but also does it bring you joy? Is it something that makes you happy? Because generally, you wanting to change something is a passion of yours, and in you doing that would bring you joy, right? So thinking about how do you blend the two, and looking at your strengths, like you've mentioned, Daniel, your strengths are really important. It's really important to know, what are you good at? I'm not the best planner in the world. I'm not. Like, I did project management. Yes, I understand in principle, but I'm not really a planner. But my strength is I have a vision. I have lots of ideas. So that's what I bring to the table. So now how do I create or bring people around me that can support me in the areas that I'm not great at, and they have the strength. So just going back, I guess purpose is that niggling feeling. It's that thinking about what do you want to change in society? So what's the one thing or several things that you want to change? What brings you joy? And what are your strengths? And what you would realise is that most of the time they're all quite aligned. They are all quite aligned. Supporting people, I say I'm a personable person. I did a leadership, one of those questionnaires, and they said I'm an affiliative leader. So I thrive off of relationships. And that's my strength, is building relationships, building rapport and all of that stuff. That is my strength. And that strength has seen me through in every career, and it's supported my purpose. So thinking about your strengths. And then finally, just not being an island on your own, I think, as well. If you want to drive your purpose, don't be an island. Because you can't do it all. So get people around you that can support you in doing the things that maybe you are not so good at doing, that will drive your purpose.
Okay, that's great. Did you have mentoring at any stage in your career progression? Because obviously, like I said, you've done various different things on your journey thus far. And if you did, how important do you think mentoring is for anyone who's watching this podcast? As a sort of something that an accelerator, in somebody's career progression.
I think mentoring is incredibly important. I think mentoring, sponsorship is incredibly important. It's important for any young person or whoever you are to find somebody who can mentor you or sponsor you in the workplace, to show you the ropes, but also be that guiding light to navigate the different challenges within the workplace or within your career progression. So I've not officially had any mentors. So I've not officially gone into a mentoring sort of relationship with anyone. But I've been extremely blessed and fortunate that I've had fantastic line managers or fantastic managers that have, mentored me or have coached me into realizing my strengths, into also realizing my weaknesses, but coaching me as to how to navigate workplaces and navigate certain situations. So, for example, when I worked in the higher education higher education university, when I worked at the university, the person who hired me was actually an amazing mentor to me. They would just give me tips here and there. Mabinty, maybe when you're in that meeting, it's better to nod than to come in with a question, or it's better that you write down your questions beforehand, and just giving me those tips. But also they believed in me. They really believed in my capability. They stretched me. They gave me opportunities that wouldn't have naturally come about, but they opened that door. They left the door ajar for me to then go and open up myself. Because I think the role of a mentor is not to give everything to you on a plate, right? It's to just give you the resources or the tools, and then for you to then go ahead and implement yourself. So they did that. And then my line manager, and I talk about her a lot on LinkedIn, at the NHS, I had just started working there following the birth of my second child. And for anyone who's had children would know, any woman who's had children and would know, after maternity leave, there is a knock on your confidence, because you've been out of the work market for a year, out of the workplace for a year. Things have moved on, and specifically around the time that I had my second child, it was during COVID. It was during COVID. So a lot had changed. The way the workplace worked had changed. So going in, I lacked a lot of confidence, but she saw something in me that I didn't even see myself. She would take me along to meetings. She would give me opportunities. I spoke for a leading training platform where you train, so they film short videos on training stuff. She was asked to do it, but she said, you know what, nah, it's not, I'm not great at this stuff, but you are, Mabinty, why don't you go ahead and do it? And I did it, and from that has come so many opportunities that I didn't even know I could do. But she saw something in me, and she carried on. And even currently, I think with my current line manager, there is a good relationship where they stretch and they give you the opportunity. So I think for an individual, as being open-minded and looking out for people, it might not always be. I've been fortunate that my mentors or the people that have sponsored me have been my line managers, but for others that might not be the case. But that's not to say there are not people out there who can offer you that. So looking online and seeing networks of people who do your job, going along to those events and meeting new people and trying to source out if there's anyone there interested in mentoring. There are so many platforms that offer mentoring for individuals. So just putting yourself out there, I would say, would be really good. And for managers and people who are senior in organizations, please pull that ladder, put that ladder down, and don't be a gatekeeper. That would be my ask of today, if any, is don't be a gatekeeper, please. It's already difficult when you are someone from a marginalized group who opportunities may not readily be available to. It's so important that if you are there and you identify as being any one of those groups, to ensure you're in a senior position, to ensure that you are not gatekeeping, but instead you're pulling down the ladder, you are pulling people up to the level in which you are, to the level up from them, whatever it might be, and you are sharing the stage with them. I think that's so important, because succession planning, you don't want to be the only one in that position and there's no one coming up from you. I think that would be a disservice to you being in that position. But I think also it's unfair for the next generation to not be able to see people who look like them or identify as they do in those senior positions.
Right. What advice would you give to your younger self? You know, if you have the opportunity to, look back, what would you have done differently?
I guess for me, it's confidence, it's believing in my own source, I think would be what I would do differently. I think, and just going back to the original story about being an immigrant child, is when you are an immigrant child, or when you are a person of colour from the global majority, as I am Black, Sierra Leonean, there is always that feeling of you are never enough, that this isn't your home, you are just a guest here. And that feeling can often overtake your confidence. You become an imposter in your own life, if that makes sense, in your own life story. So for me, one thing I would definitely, an advice I would give to my younger self is, you are not an imposter. You belong here, and walk in your greatness, not to sound cocky or anything, but we all have greatness that lives within us, and just ensuring that we're walking in our greatness, and we are being everything that we've been called to be. So just going back to the purpose question, that you are living your purpose, that you are being your true authentic self, and you're not letting the white noise distract you. And I think a lot of the time, and I say this as though it's a advice to my younger self, it's kind of still an advice to me today, it's not to listen to the white noise. It's the fact that you are not an imposter. I think David McQueen, who's a prominent coach on LinkedIn, put a post up a couple of weeks ago where he said, your ancestors did not go through everything they did for you to feel like an imposter. And that's true. Like, I am not an imposter. I belong here. So, and I think everyone needs to believe that they belong here to fully reach their potential. So that would be the advice I would give to my younger self. I would give to my children. I'm giving to my older self now, to my 30-something-year-old self now, is that you are not an imposter. You belong, and walk in your strengths, walk in your greatness.
Okay. Imposter syndrome, which you've just touched on, and obviously relating to confidence. How would you say that somebody can basically, or what can somebody do to grow in that confidence? From the door being open, being given opportunities. What can somebody do practically to get to that stage where within themselves they kind of feel that, look, I'm getting this, I'm getting better at this, I'm finding my strengths, and this could be something that I could excel at. How can what advice can you give to somebody who is struggling with their confidence?
I think the first thing is get a coach. That would be my first advice, is get a coach, whether that's formally through work or through, again, we've spoken about your tribe or your community, who is amongst your community that can coach you and mentor you. Now, I spoke about line managers, but there was a specific person. Can I name people?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Okay, there was a specific person, Uncle Uche, at church. And Uncle Uche, basically, he didn't even realize he was doing it at the time, but he would give me hints and tips here and there around my career journey and what I should be doing. And we went for dinner last year with his wife, my husband and I, and his wife, and I was telling him, well, you told me to do this and I've done it, and you told me. He was like, wow, I didn't even realize I was telling you all of that stuff. And then I was like, yes, you did, but at the time I didn't have a formal line manager who was giving me those tips and tricks, but somebody within my community was. So even if you don't have a line manager who you have that relationship with, find someone within your community that can offer you that and be receptive to that advice or to that coaching. So coaching would be the first thing. I think the second thing would be building up your knowledge as well. No one's ever an expert. So being abreast on anything that's happening within your area. So utilizing spaces such as LinkedIn, reading articles, listening to podcasts, reading books, going to networking events, meeting other people, forming networks with other people, I think would really support you and grow your confidence. Because what happens sometimes, specifically in the DEIB realm, is it often feels like you're on an island on your own, because you've got so much to do. In most organizations, there's so much to do. So you often feel alone, and you often feel like, am I going mad here? Am I going crazy? Like, what's happening? But then when you have that network of people that say, Mabinty, no, you're not, because that same incident happened in my workplace 2 weeks ago, or we had the same results from our reports, or whatever. You get that sense of validation, really, and that's really, really important. So building your network, I think, would be good. And I think also just telling yourself you're great and telling yourself you can do that. As much as I talk about validation from others, it's really important to self-validate yourself. I always say to myself, Mabinty, you went through 3 rounds of interviews to get the job that you're in now. Others only do 1. So you were the best person for this role. Believe that. And sometimes that means having to go to the toilet, do a bit of meditation, some breathing exercises, and chanting that to yourself. But it helps, because then when you step out there, at least a grain of you believes it. Even if it's just 1% of you that believes it, is better than 0%. So I think it's just doing little things like that to support you in your confidence.
Okay. Soft skills. What soft skills would you say have helped you along your journey to this point that somebody watching could also perhaps learn from? I
think for me in this role, soft skills is, can I just, controversial, can I say something?
Sure.
Slightly controversial. I don't believe in soft skills.
Okay.
I don't believe that there are such things as soft skills. So often people think about soft skills as in terms of style of management, right, will be considered a soft skill, whilst a competency skill is whether, if you're an accountant, is whether you can do the books, right? But when you become a senior leader in an organization, the competency stuff is less appropriate because you have a team of people that are delivering for you, right? That are doing that. So the softer skills, so to speak, actually are your hard skills, are the skills that you need to have. So you need to have the skill of being an approachable senior leader or leader of a team. So you need to be able to create that brave and safe space for members of your team to come and have conversations with you, challenge you, praise you, all those things. But you need to be able to create that space. And if you're unable to do that, your staff will feel unmotivated, productivity would hit, and all of that stuff. So I think, just going back to my original gripe, I don't believe in the term soft skills, because I think all skills are really important, but particularly soft skills are, because you need to be able to influence people in order to get whatever it is across the board. I remember when I worked at the charity that trained head teachers, I'd asked our internal comms team to do something for us, do something for me, very short notice, and they did. And the following day, I said to them, I'm going to buy you a box of Krispy Kremes. They were like, don't do that, don't waste your money. I bought a box of Krispy Kremes and I went downstairs and I gave them the box of Krispy Kremes. The director was there at the time and he said to me, Mabinty, you didn't need to do that. It's our job. I said, yeah, I understand it's your job, but I'm showing appreciation for you doing it for me. Short notice. And they were like, oh, thank you. This is going to be great. We can have it along lunchtime, whatever it might be. But at that point, I built some sort of rapport with them. I showed them value in what they were doing. And I think that's important. So for me, the skills that I think I'm good at that has helped me in my career has been relationship building, has definitely been building relationships with different people, networking. I'm quite, I said before, I'm an affiliative leader, an affiliative person. I thrive off of relationships. I don't think you can get anything done if you don't know the person you're doing it with or you're doing it for. And it's really important to understand the people you work with or the people you are working for. So working within a charity, who are our beneficiaries? Who are our audience? Who are the people we are supporting? It's important to understand that. And also as a trustee, right? I'm a trustee for a charity. As a trustee, who am I essentially advocating for? Who am I sitting around that table saying, this is what we have to do for those individuals? And you can only do that by getting to know them. So I think getting to know people, creating that safe, brave space, building up trust, building up rapport, being able to influence, I think are really soft skills, but they're not soft to me, that everyone needs, essentially. Okay. Yeah.
Fantastic, Mabinty. We have a tradition on this podcast where we give our guests the opportunity to dedicate the episodes that they feature on to anyone or any group of people of their choice. Who would you like to dedicate today's episode to? And you can look to the camera for that.
Okay, I guess today I want to dedicate it to 3 generations of people. I guess the first one is to my grandfather, who was a single parent for some time, looking after several children. I won't say how many before I miss someone out. After my maternal grandmother passed away, and did it in such a kind, loving way, and has always remained a kind, loving man. So this is for my grandfather. It's for my mum, who worked incredibly hard when we were growing up, multiple jobs to ensure we had what we needed to go through school and everything else. So I guess this is for her hard work, her love, her time, everything that she poured into us. So I guess this is for her. And then the last generation, this is for my children, for Isaiah and Moriah. And I hope one day they would watch this and they would know that their mum was resilient, persevered, but had a lot of passion and zeal to get through. And just to know that I worked really hard to ensure that they had the right foundations growing up, even though my foundations may have been a bit turbulent, that theirs would be strong for them to build upon. So that's my dedication.
Fantastic. Mabinty, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And for coming on Against All Odds. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd like to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And see you next week.
See you.
Thank you.